So the Smith-Morra gambit is something really tricky to face, and I think I've come across something that gives black very good chances on a practical level, and it really means that you either get a nice positional game, which is something a Smith-Morra player doesn't really want to play, or you're actually the one sacrificing the material, as I'm about to show you in my training game that I had recently. So I try to play training games to keep up, so when I play in overball tournaments, I'm fresh. But as the game went, e4, c5, d4 going into the Smith-Morra, takes, and then my opponent plays c3, but instead of accepting it with the typical d takes c3, or even declining it and going into the Alapin variation, but this isn't the Alapin that I play, I've come across this idea with e5, and I think this is a really strong idea to take your opponents out of theory, because this really isn't played much, and it is a good move, in my opinion. So my opponent plays knight f3, I feel like this is the critical line, and we're about to see the complete critical line, because after knight f6 he plays bishop c4. Now you could play this positionally, and this is sort of the thing that you have to contend with. But against a Smith-Morra player, something like this is the other line you can go to, where it resembles a Scotch, but you sort of lost these pawns here, and I feel that this is quite pleasant. And as some positional player like myself, I'd rather go into this, whereas a Smith-Morra person, like I was saying, is wanting to gambit everything. So instead of that, my opponent goes into the critical line, oh, sorry, with bishop c4. Now this is a move that you do have to be aware of because there are some key ideas here. So you play knight f6. Placing it at g5, going after this pawn. This looks quite scary. But after d5, you shut that down. And the key important move here is instead of taking on d5 for your knight, you can actually play this really interesting move, knight a5. And this sets up a lot of nasty ideas for white to fall into. Because the most natural move here, and the most common played moves, are either bishop b5 check or knight f5 check. And a4 check, sorry. And these will lead into the same sort of idea. My opponent in my game played queen a4, but I can block with the bishop, and then he plays bishop b5. And a really nasty move that you can play here, and I think is really strong. I think bishop e7 has some similar ideas, but the move that I play here helps force the tactic is a6. Now, it doesn't look like there's anything going wrong here for white at all. And if you're playing white, you feel like you've got a good advantage, you're the one actually attacking. But really, you do need to be careful because you can take here with the bishop, and you might think, oh, the knight's just going to take back and I'm going to have a nice position. And in fact, in this position that's been reached 600 times on lead chess, 98% of the time people take back with a knight, which is a playable move, white is slightly better. But actually, I think the more critical line, and even better line according to Stockfish, is actually to take with a queen. Now, you might be thinking, oh, but what about the knight? And this is where sort of the whole opening idea has come into play. And if anything, I would play e5 for this idea itself. And it's kind of the reason why I do play e5 against the Smith-Morra, is because your opponent can take the knight, which is a complete blunder, as you can see by the event engine on that side. Yeah, and also the blunder symbol that I put next to it. It's a bit hard to see why it's a blunder, because if you even, sorry, let me just flip the board. It doesn't look like black has anything here. I mean, there's not many pieces developed for black. There's not nothing going wrong. But if we go back, actually we can take this pawn here, and white's in a lot of trouble. And you have to find an only move really to at least try being in the game. I mean, you're still losing. But my opponent here unfortunately played the complete blunder, which is to castle, and it's black to play here and win one move that just completely crushes the game, which is b6. And the queen actually has no squares to go to. The bishop covers this diagonal, the queen covers this diagonal, and the knight just is the only piece that it can take pretty much, and the knight also guards the pawn. So yeah, my opponent actually resigned in this position in the rapid game. But if you wanted to continue, I mean, you just take here and you're just up a queen. So yeah, this is just crushing. You might think, okay, maybe I don't castle. What do I do instead? You could try taking the pawn here, but obviously this is just bad to this. You could try giving your queen some space by supporting a4, but then you can push the queen to a4, and you can bring back, and there's just a sort of range of different moves that are really strong here for black, like bishop e7 hitting the knight, but also threatening to come back to d8 to trap the queen, which is a bit nasty. If, for example, bishop a3, then I think, yeah, bishop d8 is just crushing because you've taken away the square that queen wanted to go to. But yeah, this is just a really strong, nice idea. So if we go back to this position, the only move that actually sort of tries for white is knight f3. The point being is if you go for the same idea, then you can attack the queen. And now, oh, sorry, the queen can't stay on this diagonal to lock the queen out. So if in this position you play f3, then you're putting the threat back on the board. And really, this position is just very hard to play for White. There are some critical lines that you have to know here, but you can explore them explore them a bit more if you want to know a bit more. There's often an idea about the knight coming to f4. Often these pawns will just push, and this center is very strong and very mobile. So yeah, it's a really good idea, and I definitely recommend doing it. There are a few other lines that you have to be a bit careful of. Like at some points, Queen E2 can come, and again, in many of these lines, you're just completely happy to sack this knight because White will spend so much time sacking it that you can just start pushing down the center. And yeah, it's definitely an opening that I'd suggest exploring. All these lines are really exciting for Black. But yeah, thanks for watching, and stick around for some more chess.